Well, I first came to England in 1979 after I'd spent a year in America in 78. Where a group of us New Zealanders competed in the World Equestrian Games. It was the first time a New Zealand team had ever competed at anything like that. And I'd always wanted to compete in England. I'd sort of, obviously as a child growing up, read stories about eventing in England and badminton in particular. And always wanted to give it a try, and I had the opportunity. I was offered a job in England in 1979 with a Swiss horse dealer actually, who was living near Newbury, and so in 79 I moved to England. I brought a horse with me, a horse called Jocasta that I'd brought over from New Zealand, and went to watch badminton in 79 and then hoped that I would possibly be able to ride there one day. And as luck would have it, I went home at the end of 79 and bought a horse and came back and went to badminton. And he was a horse that had done quite a bit of eventing in New Zealand, and in those days there wasn't too much about qualifications, so you entered and you rocked up, and so I did in 1980. So I'd been back to New Zealand at the end of 1979 and bought this horse, Southern Comfort, and we arrived back I think probably around February, March time of 1980. I was actually on the same flight as David Green, who was going to base himself with Lucinda Pryor-Palmer, as she was then, and I bought the horse specifically to go to badminton. He'd obviously never done anything like that in his life, but as I say, in those days there weren't qualifications. I ran him in a few events beforehand, and he'd gone reasonably well. The last event, a warm-up event, was an event called Brigstock, and it was quite a big advanced track, and he'd jumped around there really well. So I was happy that the horse was ready to face badminton, and I think back then badminton was a huge thing. The leading riders at the time were Lucinda Pryor-Palmer and Mark Phillips and Richard Mead, to name a few, and for me, it's coming from the other side of the world, badminton had this sort of aura. It was sort of almost a magical aura, and also coming from New Zealand, I'd never seen anything like badminton. The house, the stables, and everything else. So it was very much a huge learning curve, and I guess I was just so excited to be there, and just taking everything in. I wasn't sort of thinking too much about the course. As it turned out, Badminton 1980 was one of the toughest courses that they built there for years. But when I walked the course, I just thought, well, this is badminton. This is what you've got to do. And there's nothing like the ignorance and innocence of youth. I just believed that my horse could do it and I could do it, and that was all there was to it. I had the help of David O'Connor's mother, actually Sally O'Connor, who we'd stayed with in America, and she had come over for badminton that year, and she had walked the course with me, and we'd sort of made a plan. And I think from memory, I was about sort of midway through the field to go cross country, and Sally had been, I can't remember whether it was closed circuit TV then or just gathering information. But by the time I went or was due to go, I think there was only about 3 clear rounds or 2 clear rounds, and it had caused carnage. And I came into the 10-minute box, and Sally admitted afterwards she didn't really know what to tell me, because there was hardly anybody who got round. She just said, yes, it's riding fine. So I was sort of happy with that, and set out, and The horse was actually amazing, and I had a lucky moment at the footbridge, where the horse sort of skidded along on his knees, but he picked himself up, and I think we're only one of 3 combinations to go clear inside the time that year. So after the cross country, I was in 3rd place, which was beyond my wildest dreams, really. But it very nearly ended there, because we had in the old stables that I was in, we had a barley boiler, and I decided to boil up some barley to give the horse a bit of a treat after the cross country. But I couldn't get it to go, so I bent down to have a look and lit the match, and it blew up in my face, singed all my eyebrows and eyelashes off. Actually, Andrew Nicholson, he'd come over that year, and he came along to help me at Badminton, so he was grooming for me there. And I mean, back in those days, I mean, it was so different. The horse there was a lot of drops that year, and the ground had been quite firm, and the horse was a little bit stiff and sore after the cross country. So I got the treating vet there, who was Peter Scott Dunn, who was a famous vet at the time, and he came along and had a look at him and felt him over, and he said, yes, he's fine, he's just a little bit jarred up. So we got through the trot up, and then there was just the show jumping. And I guess because I'd done a lot of show jumping in New Zealand and show jumped to grade A, and this horse had done a lot of show jumping, he was a grade B show jumper. When I bought him in New Zealand, I did a few show jumping and jumped him sort of metre 30, metre 40 classes. So I was confident that he was a good jumper, and he felt great. But in front of me was Lucinda Pryor-Palmer on, the name escapes me now, and Hugh Thomas's sister, actually, Helen Butler, on Maganza. I think she was in the lead, but he was known not to be a good show jumper. Lucinda, well, everybody, she'd already won it 4 or 5 times by that stage, so everybody just expected that she was going to win. So I went in, and my horse jumped a clear round. And in those days, we had a water jump in the show jumping as well. And so Lucinda was next to go, and she jumped round. It was Claire, actually, I remember now, who was a good, he wasn't her normal type of horse, but he was a good solid sort of horse and a good jumper. But he put a foot in the water, so she dropped behind me. And then poor Helen, she had 4 rails down, which meant I won it. And so I was in shock and disbelief, and everybody around me that was, that helped me and was involved with me was in disbelief as well. So it took a long time to sink in.